Wow.
On our own class.
Okay. All right, let's talk about narrative essay or story writing. How to write a story.
Go.
So we're going to learn how to write a story. Story writing is basically called narrative writing or narrative essay. And narrative essay tells a story. Narrative essay tells a story. Narrative composition or story writing or narrative writing, they mean the same thing. All you need to know is that anytime you are told to write narrative essay or composition, it basically means you are writing a story. And how you write a story or how you tell a story is so much dependent on what you know about story writing. Some stories can be so boring that you don't like to read them. And yet some stories can be very, very interesting that by the time the story ends, you are wondering why. It is because the writer has taken time to weave out the story in such a way that it appeals to the reader. So every story needs certain things or criteria you need to meet in order for you to make a good story or write a good story or tell a good story. I like telling stories, usually in my lesson, physical lesson, where just to make the class interesting or engaging, I usually like to come up with stories that will make students to laugh. While they are laughing, they find lessons that are embedded in the story I am telling. And story writing is generally very, very good because sometimes you don't need to tell people something straight up. You can just wrap up whatever you want to do or the message you want to pass to someone in a story. By the time that person is done reading that story, he or she would have gotten the lesson. So stories are very good. It entertains, it educates, and it informs. So we need to learn and master the art of storytelling or story writing. Now, one of the things you need to do in your story is how your story begins. It is very, very interesting. It is very, very important that you create something very, very creative or unique that will make your story appealing to your readers. Your story needs a strong beginning. Your story needs a strong beginning. And you can achieve this using one of the following methods. Number one, it could be dialogue. What is a dialogue? A dialogue is a conversation between two or more characters in a story. A conversation between two or more characters in a story is called dialogue. Your story can begin with a question, usually rhetorical question, where you don't expect, where the reader, the writer does not expect an answer from the reader, just for them to ponder on. Your story can begin with a vivid description. That is like the setting of the story. Of course, you know that every story must have setting. A place where the story takes place is setting. The time where that story takes place is setting. All stories must have setting. All stories must have dialogue. All stories must have conflict. So you must have setting in your story. You must have dialogue in your story. You must have conflict in your story. What is conflict? The disagreement between characters that leads to something very, very I mean, a high tension problem that finally gets resolved at the end of the story. There must be conflict in a story, a disagreement of some sort that both two characters may be struggling with or more. At the end of the day, it will be resolved. So you must have setting where the story takes place in this, the story up, wait, the story takes place or when it happened. You must have dialogue, the way characters are engaged in a conversation. You must have conflict that brings about disagreement between characters in the story. And then you can begin your story with a question, I've explained that, or vivid description that tells about the setting. Then you can also begin a story with an interesting fact. Usually maybe a quote or something that propels the story to move on. And then you can as well start your story with a sound effect. These are various ways through which you can start your story. For example, starting your story with a dialogue, you can say, hurry or you'll be late. Called my mom from the bottom of the stairs. Today of all days, you want to be on time, or we want to be on time. If I had only known what that day would bring, I would have stayed in bed. Imagine opening your story like this. Everybody will want to read your story to the end and wonder what really happened. What could have happened? What could have gone wrong at the end of the story? If you begin your story like this. So this is just one way of starting your story, using what? A dialogue. The second way of starting your story could be question. Look at it on the screen here. Have you ever had a day when you wished you had stayed in bed? As I rushed to catch the bus on what seemed to be a perfectly normal day, I had no idea what was ahead of me. Have you ever had a day where you wish you had stayed in bed? You don't need to answer such question. It's rhetorical, but it gives you a reflective mindset. It makes you begin to reflect. It makes you begin to think, what really happened? What could have happened? What makes the writer to say this? Why is the narrator talking like this? What is going on in the story? And that will prompt you to read the story to the end. That's the use of question. Then sometimes you need to start your story with a vivid or clear and accurate description. You are describing the setting, for instance, or how the story would begin. Imagine saying this: the sun was warm on my back as I raced toward the waiting yellow school bus. As I nestled into the warm leather seat, I was greeted by the friendly voices of other excited children. The look on my face was one of confidence and contentment. With a jerk, the bus rumbled down the road, and I was on my way into one of the worst days of my life. Wow. This is a perfect, a vivid description of the beginning of a story. Imagine having your story beginning like this. Oh God, everybody will want to be reading such a story. We want to enjoy what you're writing. I like to read such story. A story that begins like this. I like to read it. I like to know what's going on. I like to enjoy the story because the description alone has already done what? Made me to say, oh, this is going to be a very good story to read. Yeah. So you need to find out what works for you. What unique style do you have that can make you tell your story effectively? It is very important. Then you could use an interesting fact. For instance, shock has been known to kill 10-year-olds. It can cause the brains to explode and the heart to stop dead still. These facts raced through my mind as I stood dumbfounded in front of my 5th grade classmates. I wish I had stayed in bed. This is another way of writing a story by bringing out facts. What is fact? The facts about shock now. Someone is writing, the writer is writing about shock, and then he opens up with that interesting fact and makes you wonder, wow, what really happened? Oh, did the person die? Did the person, what was it? What, you begin to question a lot of things until you begin to go through the story. Sound effects. Buzz. The sound of my alarm clock drone in my ears as I struggle to come away. With a start, I sat straight up in my bed. This was my big day, and I had to be on time. So these are various ways through which you can open your story, and then you flow on. You know, you need to understand different ways of writing your stories. Now, number 2, the paragraphs. How do you structure the paragraphs in your story? Be sure your story has paragraphs. They tell when you are switching time, place, topic, or speaker, and they help break the page up so it is not just a solid block of writing. So you can't just write in one paragraph, a lengthy one paragraph from the beginning to the end, and then you call that a story or essay. No, your essays, whether narrative, descriptive, persuasive, the argumentative, or anything, must be broken down into paragraphs. In that, with that, you make your paragraph tell how you, when you switch time, when you switch place, when you switch topic, or even when you change your speaker, and they help them to break up. So it is not just a solid block of one long, endless, boring writing that people find it very difficult to understand. And then, how do I know when to start a new paragraph? There are a few standard times to make a new paragraph. For instance, how do you begin a new paragraph? When you start in on a new topic, a new paragraph will come in. When you skip to a new time, a new paragraph will come in. When you skip to a new place, you bring in a new paragraph. When a new person begins to speak, you begin a new paragraph. And finally, when you want to produce a dramatic effect, that's when you do what? You signal a new paragraph or the beginning of a new paragraph. Do you understand?
Yes.
Thank you. Now, the next point there is the use of punctuations. Many students don't know how to punctuate stories because, you know, stories use dialogue or conversation between characters. And then before you bring in what a character is saying, you need to do what? You need to punctuate it, punctuate what the character is saying, using what we call in English speech mark or quotation mark or inverted comma. You need inverted commas, you need the commas, you need semicolon, colons, and all other punctuations to be able to write a good story. For instance, the use of capitalization. Beginning a sentence, all sentences must begin with a capital letter. All sentences. Then the use of proper nouns. All proper nouns, which means names of people, names of places, must begin with a capital letter. It doesn't matter where they appear in the sentence or in the paragraph. They must begin. For instance, I want to write Samira's name, and then your name is going to appear in the middle of my sentence in the story. I don't need to begin your name with a small letter because it is in the middle of the sentence. No, your name is a proper noun, and as such, I must begin it with what? With a capital letter. I must begin your name with a capital letter. It doesn't really matter where your story, your name appears in the sentence or in the paragraph. So where and how do you need capital letter? You need capital letter when you want to begin a sentence anywhere in your writing. You need capital letter whenever you want to write a proper noun, names of people, names of key places in the story. You must begin each of them with a capital letter. Then punctuation, end marks, full stop at the end of your sentence, question mark at the end of an interrogative sentence, exclamation mark at the end of an exclamatory sentence. Sentence that expresses feelings, you must end with what? Exclamation mark. Sentence that is just a normal statement, end with a full stop. Sentence that ends with a question, ends with a question mark. And we call it end marks because it comes at the end of the sentence. So if it is a question, what is going on here? For instance, question mark, that's a sentence, but that sentence is an interrogative sentence. You know, oh, the weather is so friendly today, full stop. That's a declarative statement. And then, congratulations, you finally made it, full stop. That's an exclamatory sentence. So in either case, in any of those ones, you must look at the right conclusion mark and apply it. You use commas when you are joining two sentences with the conjunction. For instance, compound sentence that you want to bring in using farm boys, for, and, nor, but, or, yet, and so. Before you bring in any of the coordinators, you need a comma that will come before any of the coordinators to join two sentence clauses that will give you what? A compound sentence. And then you need them when you want to address a person, you need a comma. You need also, when you use quotation, quoting someone, a character, you also need the use of what? Comma. Then number 4, use rich words. Don't use boring and monotonous words in your writing a story. Use rich words. Remember, words such as said, went, and put are dead words. Use words that describe the action. Let's say he said, he went, he put. Those are commonly boring words that you don't need to use in your writing. You need to look out for words that are not boring, that will do what that will stir up, you know, some kind of creativity in the minds of your readers. Now look at this. Went, not my dad went to work, but you can say my dad raced to work. My dad raced to work. It's better than saying my dad went to work. Do you understand? Look at this. Said, you can, Jane said she had a secret. No, you can just say, Jane whispered to Peter a wonderful secret. Jane whispered to Peter a wonderful secret. So the second sentence is very good and important. Look at the next one here. Number 5. Use wow words. Use wow words. Show your reader that you have a high quality, first class, superior, excellent, exceptional, outstanding, brilliant, extraordinary, incomparable vocabulary. You know, for instance, if you are in 5th grade, 6th grade, 7th grade, 10th grade, or something, tell them that you are rich with words and then use those words. For instance, don't use good, bad, thin, big, small, important, happy, sad. Instead, say something like acceptable, admirable, commendable. Oh, it's commendable, it's admirable, it's praiseworthy, it's virtuous, it's accomplished, it's skilled, you know. Don't say bad. You can say, oh, it's defective, erroneous, inadequate, substandard, corrupt, vile, distressing, severe, offensive, immoral. Or something like thing, you could say material, object, article, concept. I don't like this concept. I don't like this apparatus, device, detail, statement, items. For big, you can say, oh, it's considerable, it's colossal, immense, sizable, vast, eminent, influential, paramount, prime, prominent. Those are words to use instead of using all this boring, good, bad, thin, big, small, important, happy, and sad. You know, so you need to study words, build more. You need to stock more words in your mental dictionary. So when you are writing stories, you don't lack what to say. So wow words like tasty, sparkly, grumpy, bouncy, scary, you know, colorful, prickly, beautiful, and then massive and all. Those are words you need. And finally, in your stories, though you are telling stories, you need to do more of showing than telling. Don't tell method of writing is when the writer is able to create a picture in the reader's mind. Get away from the repetition of such empty words like went, big, or said. My dad raced to work. I can't forget that when you say my dad went to work. So please, you write in such a way that it inspires, you know, some level of entertainment and creativity in the minds of your reader. For instance, you can say, no, you cannot, you can, instead of saying Susan exercise, you can say sweat poured from Susan's forehead as she continued to do 100 sit-ups. Everybody knows what they are saying, that you are talking about exercise. And Susan went to exercise. No, you could just say sweat poured from Susan's forehead as she continued to do 100 syrups. You know, it makes so much sense. Then conversation. Your stories must use dialogue. Very important. Dialogue. You know, the 5 rules for writing in direct quotation. You know, rule 1, add, separate, capitalize, add again, add needed. You know, if you are, I'm going to send these slides to you so Mr. Samuel can share with you, either to print them for you or to give you to use it and for your studies. Remember, you must make a new paragraph every time a different person does what speaks in your story. Now the sentences, your sentences must vary. For instance, you must use simple sentence, compound sentence, complex sentence, depending on what you are writing. Do you understand? So now I'm going to let you read a story, one interesting story, and see how all these apply in that story. I want Samira, are you there? You help me read a story. I will show you a story that you read the story to the class. Let's see how all this I've told you apply in this story. So give me a few seconds. Let me project the story and then we begin. Okay, here is the story. The title of the story is The 3 Princes. The 3 Princes. So Samira, please, you help us read the story.
A tale from Saudi Arabia. Long ago on the Arabian Peninsula, when cities flourished along the major trade routes that stretched across the desert to transport spices, almonds and dates, there ruled in one of those cities a king whose daughter had come of marriageable age. 3 princes of nearby cities came to court her, but the princess looked at them with alarm. One prince was bossy, the second prince unclean in his habits, and the third suitor was vain. Father, I beg you, don't make me marry any of them, she cried.
Can you hear that? The writer, the character started by introducing what a dialogue. You can see how dialogue comes in the story after the setting. Thank you. Read on.
The king loved his daughter, but he didn't want to offend her suitors and risk injuring his neighboring city-states. I will think about it, he said. Come back tomorrow. The next day, he summoned the 3 suitors and the princess to his throne room. Each of you is a perfectly worthy suitor for my daughter's hand, he said. Therefore, to make the correct decision, I have determined that the 3 of you must venture into the world for 1 year and a day. Whoever returns with the most wondrous item will win my daughter's hand in marriage. The princess was glad for the 1 year extension, and the king was equally glad to. To postpone the matter. The 3 princes set out together. After traveling for 1 week, they came to a well that was locked before a fork in the road, beyond which the road branched into 3 separate paths. Obviously, this is where we should part, stated the first prince. Don't you think we know that? Said the second prince, wiping his dirty hands on his cloak. Listen carefully, the first prince continued. 1 week before we return to the place, let's all meet at this well to compare what we found. I only hope the maidens don't slow me down by falling in love with me, said the third prince, throwing back his hair with such a nice sense.
Nuisance.
And so the 3 princes went their separate ways. When the time came to return to the well, each one followed his separate paths back to the well. You look a little the worse for wear, said the first prince to the second. I'm fine, said the second prince, blowing his nose onto his sleeve. What did you find? Only a crystal ball, said the first prince, as nonchalantly as he could. That shows anything you want to see that's happening anywhere in the world. The other two were impressed and a bit worried. Said the first prince to the second, what wondrous item did you find? From under his cloak, the second prince unrolled a carpet. A flying carpet, people who sit on it can be transported anywhere in the world they wish to go in minutes. Is it on my sitting next to you? Another prince murmured, holding his nose. And now it was the third prince's turn to show what he had brought. The wheel, said the third prince, puts a magical healing ointment. One dab of it will restore the health of anyone, no matter how sick, and they say if it's rubbed with true love, can even restore your use. Speaking of health, said the second prince to the first, since you have a crystal ball, let's take a look at our princess and see how she fares. The first prince waved his hands over the crystal ball. Its cloudiness disappeared and was replaced with an image of the princess lying in her bed, still as death. Her father and the court physicians hovered over her. Isn't there anything you can do, said the king. Sire, we have done everything, said the head court physician. I'm sorry, but she has very little time left. The three princes leapt up, alarmed. Alice, cried the third prince, my ointment would heal her, but we are too far from the place. We had never get there in time. Quick, everyone, on my magic carpet, said the second prince. We will get there in a flash. Indeed, moments later, the three princes were standing in the very room they had viewed through the crystal ball only minutes before. Everyone was so distraught, they didn't notice the three princes had suddenly appeared in the room. Without a word, the third prince stepped up to the princess' bed and with his finger touched a dab of ointment on her forehead and set the ointment by her bedstand. She blinked and seconds later opened her eyes. Then she moved her head and sat up. I feel better, she said. It's miracle, cried the father, and he embraced his daughter. Later that night, the three princes appeared before the king. Your Majesty, said the first prince, each of us may have located a magic item, but there is no doubt that my crystal ball is the most wondrous item of all. Without it, none of us would have known the princess was sick in the first place. I submit that mine is the most wondrous item, and therefore I deserve the hand of the princess. With all due respect, said the second prince, stepping forward, while it was informative to learn that the princess was sick, had we not been able to travel a week's journey in a blink an eye on my flying carpet, that knowledge would have done us no good. I submit that mine is the most wondrous item, and therefore I deserve the hand of the princess. Good sir, said the third prince, while it may have been useful to learn the princess was sick and was helpful to arrive as quick as we did, had we not had my magical ointment, all that knowledge and all that quickness would have been in vain. I submit that mine is the most wondrous item, and therefore I deserve the hand of the princess. The king was perplexed. Each of the princes made a good argument, and since the question was so close, no matter which prince he selected, he was sure to raise their other two and their neighboring city-states.
Анису, бери телефон.
I will think about it, he
Мешать с ним
said.
читать.
Ты тоже мешаешь.
Все продолжать.
Come back tomorrow. That night, the king summoned his wizards to ask their advice. Cyrus said his head wizard. There is a wise old man who lives amongst who hails from very far away, a distant country called Russia. He is well known for his age advice, and if we allow him to make the decision, the communities of the princes who aren't chosen will get angry. The country far away and not at us. Excellent thought, said the king. Summon him to court tomorrow. The next day, when the three princes arrived to hear which of them would be selected, at court stood a very old man. He hobbled on his cane and spoke in a whisper. Хватит уже. Как не обращать внимания?
Не слушай.
Возле меня сидите все.
Что? Ты здесь не
Пусть он выйдет тогда.
Хочешь выйти?
Когда вы втроем, выйдите, пожалуйста.
Мы втроем.
The three princes repeated why they thought they deserved the hand of the princess. As far as I am concerned, asserted the king, each of these fine young men has an equal claim to my daughter's hand. And so he turned to his guest. I'm interested. You come from a faraway land. What is your opinion? The old man coughed and cleared his throat. Your Majesty, first allow me to say that it is an honor to be in your court. He raised a shaky hand towards the princess. Towards the prince, there is no doubt that each of you brought a wondrous item that saves the life of the princess. But in my country, when it comes to marriage, there are those who say that the young woman whose happiness is at stake should have a say in the matter. And so I would ask our Royal Highness. He turned to her, princess, whom do you wish to marry?
Thank you. Let's stop there. So who do you think the princess will marry at the end of the day?
I think third one.
Second prince?
Second, yes.
Really? Can I have other contribution from your classmates? Who do they think the princess will marry?
The second prince.
Really? The princess is not marrying the second prince.
And third. They said third.
The what?
Third prince.
He's not marrying the third prince.
Yeah.
She will not marry.
She's not marrying the second, she's not marrying the third.
Yes.
Would you like to know who she will marry?
Would you like?
Would you like to know who the princess will marry?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. The princess was silent a moment. She raised her head and faced the three princes. Each of you saved my life, and for that I will always be grateful. Yet, this old man is the only one, she said, looking at the Russian, who understands that the choice is one that should be mine to make. And so, Father, if you please, and here the princess stepped toward the old man, I choose him.
Who?
Can you see that? He ignored the first prince, the second prince, the third prince, and marrying the old man. Gaps of shock throughout the court. Some ladies fainted and were carried down. The king blustered, but you can't. The princess picked up the magic ointment, took the old man's hand, and with the depth of the ointment, rubbed the back of his hand. Instantly, a haze surrounded him. When she removed her hand, incredibly, the old man had straightened up to become tall and dark, with the lines of an earnest young man chiseled on his cheek. Restored to the strength and handsome stature of his youth, he smiled at the princess. Each of you will have a large tract of land to rule. The king quickly said to the three princes, we will never forget what you did to our royal family. The three princes, of course, still had in their possession the magical items of the crystal ball, the flying carpet, and the vial of healing ointment. And it wasn't long before they attracted lovely princesses from neighboring lands to marry. And so they all lived happily ever after, as may you. Do you like the story?
Yes.
And you know, the story has a surprising end. Everybody thought the princess would marry the second prince or the first prince or the third prince, but she never. That is how to write the story with suspense that nobody can predict what is going to happen in the end. So I encourage you, please find the story and write and send to me. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you.
So we have come to the end of our lesson. Thank you so very much for staying. I appreciate you.
And
Please
Mr. Seven,
just go home
you will-
and write your own story and then send to me.
our own story. Yes. You will send. Yes.
Huh?
You will send and we will print. Yes.
No. You create your own story and write to and send to me.
Our own story. Yes.
Что говорит?
Can I send questions to you? You prefer me sending you story question?
Они сядь,
No.
еще
I think
2
so.
минуты
No.
есть у нас.
You get your own story and write and send to me.
Вы же ответите за меня, пожалуйста. Я не понимаю. Can you repeat one more time, please?
I'm asking, you should write a story and send it to me.
We should write.
I want to see how you write your own story. Apply all this, but I will send the
Okay.
slides. I'll send the slides
many
and the
words?
story to you through Samuel.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for the lesson.
Thank you for the lesson.
Thank you. Bye.
Сели.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Yeah.
Всем вижу. Сядь.
Можно включить?
Всё.
Ну, не попросилась.